Cool. Okay, so welcome everybody, and my name is Kirsty Starmer, and I am a success and performance coach for ordinary people like you and me who want to achieve extraordinary things. And this is my video series where I'm interviewing amazing people who've done some amazing things, generally in the world of sport, so that we can take some lessons from them and take them into our everyday lives. And with us today, we have Shantelle Thompson. Hey, Shantelle.
Hi.
So, I know a few things about Shantelle from doing my research, and obviously we've had a few words before, but for everybody who is watching, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you've got to where you've got to.
So my name is Shantelle. I'm 32. I am a Barkindji Anglo-Saxon woman, and for those who don't know, Barkindji is an Indigenous Aboriginal tribe based in Australia, so that's my tribal heritage. I'm the mother of a 9-year-old girl and 7-year-old twins, boy and a girl. I'm currently working in a community support worker role. I'm studying Indigenous trauma and recovery. I'm an elite athlete in Brazilian Ju-jitsu, and I'm also a freestyle wrestler. This year I attempted my first Olympics after a year and a half of wrestling, just because I decided to give it a go, as you do. I'm a 2-time world champion in Jiu-jitsu. I mentor young athletes, and I work with other women in the community around self-empowerment and self-determination, and just trying to find my path in life at the moment.
Wow, busy lady, huh? Wow. So how did all this come about? How did you get into, we'll look at the elite athlete side of things, and we'll cover everything else afterwards, but athlete wise, you came into the sports you're in quite late on, didn't you?
Yeah, so I've never been a sports person per se. Like, I played a little bit of basketball and stuff growing up because that's what everyone around me did, but I was never a keen sports person or athlete. Always had a very bad temper growing up, just by virtue of how I grew up. I'm the second eldest of 17 kids, so I had to help raise, complicated, and childhood adversity describes my childhood quite well. So growing up, I would answer with my fists before I'd answer with my mouth. It was a very difficult situation to be in. But that temper kind of rolled over into my late teens, early 20s. And I started looking for boxing or something like that, just for a bit of fun. But it was after my daughter was born in Cinta that I really kind of started to train a little bit of jiu-jitsu. And I did Renshinkan karate as well. But after the birth of my twins in 2009, I developed post-natal depression and became suicidal and really entrenched in that space that I was in and unable to see a way out. So with my partner's help and a few close friends, I decided that I'd try Brazilian Ju-jitsu, because that was in our local club and that's what I'd done a little bit before, because it was my way of using, it was a physical therapy to help address the emotions that I was having, because I was so depleted after a training session and just at peace. There were no thoughts, there was nothing left. So I kind of started training, and after about a year I started competing, and things just escalated quite quickly from there.
So for those of us who don't know, what is Brazilian Jiu-jitsu? How is it different to the Jiu-jitsu that we might know as normal Jiu-jitsu, as it were? Is it different?
I think as a concept, Jiu-jitsu or Brazilian Jiu-jitsu is the base that majority of people know or are familiar with, just because of the UFC and have really brought it into the highlight. The grappling sports have really exploded since the introduction of the UFC, particularly wrestling and jiu-jitsu. But you have two types that I know of, which is Japanese jiu-jitsu, which is the original type, which has more of a standing base to it. But Brazilian Jiu-jitsu is a grappling-based sport where you use joint locks or chokes or submission holds to get an opponent to tap out, or you can win by points. And you start standing, but you work from your back, or you have a top game or a bottom game.
Okay. So how often are you training? Considering you've got 2 world championships under your belt already, what impact does it have on your life, the level that you're competing at?
I guess for me, it's just a part of what I do. I mean, I don't actually until I won my first world championship, that was what I was working towards, but I trained twice a day anyway, 6 days a week. It's just because I love it. Like, the strength and conditioning only came about because I wanted to get better at jiu-jitsu, and then I started doing yoga because I was starting to get older, and I was like, I need to add in another component because my flexibilities and my mobility is not great, and I want to look at the longevity of myself in this sport. And competing at a high level is just an added bonus to what I already do. It just helps me set goals and makes me push myself in training so that I don't become complacent. And I just like the idea, and it feels great competing against the best in the world. And I was just, it just worked out that I happened to be one of them.
Always nice when a plan comes together, isn't it?
It was great, yeah.
So talking of like all the attributes that you spoke of there, the kind of being part of your life and working towards a goal, how have you, and especially being someone who wasn't necessarily particularly sporty beforehand, how have you found that your life has been changed or bettered, or your approach to things has changed as a result of your involvement in your sport?
That's an interesting question, because that's actually what I'm in the middle of now. Is I've never done a lot of self-reflection. I've never done a lot of planning, like actually sat down and developed a strategic plan and said, okay, these are the techniques that I need to work to improve my game. I just kind of rock up to training and I do what I do, and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to enter this competition, whether it's local or international. It's not something that I intentionally set out to improve. I just worked really hard and just kept showing up. So at the moment, I'm in the middle of doing a self-reflection and a self-analysis of how do these skills transfer over. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is that what happens for me on the mats reflects my life off the mat. So if I'm having a crap day at home, I tend to take that over to the mats. But now I'm actually looking at the lessons I've learned. For example, at the moment with studying, family and everything else, I'm like, I see my life in training camps. Because you get ready, so you know you've got a competition in 3 months. So you map out 3 months worth of training and everything else. So I've started applying that concept to myself. I'm like, okay, I know that I've got to grind for the next 3 months, like really hard, because I've got assignments due, I've got work and everything else. But then I say to my children, I'm like, okay, for the next 3 months, things are going to be really busy, but then after that we're going to take a week's break, and it's just going to be you and I and Dad, and we're just going to chill. There'll be training, will just be fun, it won't be for competitive purposes, and trying to create a balance between the two, but also being more purposeful and intentional, like actually looking at what areas do I need to improve. Remaining calm, like especially in jiu-jitsu, you can get into some really hairy positions where someone's got a position where you're like, I'm going to have to tap here. And if you're doing competitions around where you're trying to create the competition atmosphere, and because you compete the way you train, it's a basic fact. And if you're not training to that level in training, then you're not going to be able to hit the level and the mindset that you need within competition. So just actually stepping back and going, oh wow, so I respond much better to pressure now and being overwhelmed. I'm able to go, relax, breathe, like I'm okay here. Like if someone's got, it's really funny, if someone's got a choke on me, I'm like, I'm actually okay here, like I'm not passing out, it hurts, but I'm okay. But if on the other hand, if someone's got like a joint lock and they've got my arm extended, and I'm like, I'm not getting out of this, and if I don't tap because of ego, I'm going to end up with a broken arm, and then I'm not going to be able to train. So applying that to my life, if I'm in a situation where I'm like, someone's going to break my arm here, and if I don't tap or I don't admit that something's going wrong, I'm going to be out. Like the damage is going to be much more extensive than the 5 minutes of pain that I'm in now. But if someone's got me under pressure or a situation and I'm like, you know what, this feels really crap, but I'm okay, I can breathe. Like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I've just got to look for the way out. I don't know if that really explains it, but that's the kind of space I'm in right now.
Yeah, totally. And I think for the people that we'll be speaking to and the people who are going to be watching this, I think that that kind of metaphor for asking for help and asking people to help you out of a hole is actually really powerful, because I know for myself, before I had my daughter, I was the person who felt like I should keep this front and make sure that everybody thought that everything was okay, no matter what was going underneath. So I think that's a really, really powerful visual for people to see that it's not just when you're kind of holding things in emotionally, it's also in that physical space as well.
Yeah.
So over the course of your training, and like you say, you have your like camps and your plans, and you're working towards certain goals. Over the course of any of those camps, have you ever had any setbacks or challenges or injuries or something that's kind of thrown you off track, that's meant you've had to adjust what you're doing? And if so, what has come out of that?
I've had two experiences. In 2013, I was getting ready for my first international competition, and I actually got a grade 1 tear on my meniscus. And I went to a sports physio who wasn't probably the best person at the time to go to, because they weren't involved with Jiu-jitsu. So they kind of didn't understand the aspects of the sport. And I ended up not training for 6 weeks before the competition. And I was also going overseas for a training camp as well. So mentally and physically, I was not the best prepared, especially for a first-time international comp. Then I had to cut weight, and I'd never done that before. So I lost first round at the competition, and I was absolutely devastated. I was like, because I was dead set certain I was going to win, but I didn't have the best preparation. I didn't have the psychology. So when I got home, I looked at that situation and I tried to learn from it in, okay, what do I need if things aren't ideal situations? I need a sports psychologist to help me. I need to make sure that I'm close enough to the weight category I want to be in, that if I do get injured, it doesn't become a problem. So I started to, like, it wasn't great, but I learned so much about myself and the adversity that I faced, but also my drive to win. I came home so much more determined, because I was like, I didn't judge myself based on the performance I had delivered, because I knew that I hadn't had ideal circumstances, but I gave it everything I had. I didn't give up, and I still tried. Whereas another camp that I had, I was invited onto a circuit where it was exhibition matches. So it was, people were paying to come and watch us compete. And I happened to be up against my greatest opponent in Australia. So there was like a little bit of admonished competition there. Oh, you bastard.
So, welcome back, everybody. We had a small technical glitch, but we're back. It's all good. It's all good. So, Shantelle, you were talking about the incident with your opponent, your Australian opponent.
So yeah, after being invited to compete on the show, which was called Bowler at the time, and it was a concept in Jiu-Jitsu, there's been a major shift in the platforms with which people use to promote Jiu-Jitsu, and they have event nights where they have super fights between big name opponents, and myself and my opponent Demi Butler were invited to be on this card. And as Jiu-Jitsu is a belt rank sport, so you have white belt all the way to black belt, and at this point I was only a blue belt at the time, so to be invited on to compete on a show of that level was really amazing, because it meant that we really were, like, Jiu-Jitsu is quite a young sport in Australia, so it meant that we were really at the top level. But at that time I was quite successful on the Australian level, and in my preparation towards that, I guess I allowed the hype and the ego to really get to me, because I really wanted to beat my opponent, because she'd beaten me last time, and we had a back and forth history of I would win, she would win. And I guess I let that drive me and drive my preparation, rather than why I do the sport and why I compete. And by the time the day rolled around, the event rolled around, like it was to the point where we had a face-off, there was media promotion, and then we had to walk out to music. So it was like walking out to the UFC, and it was like unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But in the middle of the match, I had gotten myself so emotionally heightened, I wasn't in the right zone, which wasn't a concept that I knew about back then, but I've since done research. And I was so emotionally heightened, and I was in the wrong energy zone that when the match started.
Okay, take 3.
So I guess when I wasn't in my own head when the match started, and by the time it was almost like I woke up. The match was already very intense by this point, and I was trying to play catch up because my opponent had gained points on me, and in the end I lost the bout. And I left the stage and I was devastated. Like, I started hyperventilating and I was crying, and I can't even describe the emotions that were going through my head. But now looking back on that, both those experiences, like the training camp with the injury, not having the right supports in place, but then also the not creating the right training environment and understanding myself and having the right preparation for both, have been great experiences to have had, because I'm like, well, I now know the ideal zone and mentality for me to go in and compete. And it's not coming from an ego base or focusing on the outcome of a fight, but I also know that if I don't have the best preparation, and by that, it's not necessarily meaning, oh, if I get an injury, I don't want to compete because there's no chance of me winning. It's like, okay, well, I'm injured. What is within my power, and focusing on what's within my control. Like, sometimes my kids are sick and I go to training and I'm in tears. Like, I'm exhausted. And I have people say, oh, you shouldn't cry and everything else. And I'm like, I've actually said to a coach, and I said to a training partner at different points, okay, well, you come and spend a week with me, do what I do for a week, and tell me that there's not going to be moments of tears. I'm actually okay with crying, and I don't put it down to being female or male. I'm like, this is physiology, and it's also the fact that what we do is hard. It is okay to have those moments. And I'll go home on some nights, maybe once every 2 weeks or once a month, and I'm like, I'm quitting. I'm done. I've had enough. I'm just going to become a normal person. Why do I do this to myself? And my husband goes, he gives me a hug and he's like, go to bed. You'll be fine tomorrow. So I guess that's
familiar.
it's great, because I now know what it's like to not reach my goals, to not have the greatest preparation, and to have a crap performance. But no, I'm going to survive. It's okay. Like, there's something to learn from it. It doesn't feel great, but it's not going to kill you either.
Yeah. And so having gone through the postnatal depression, these little blips in achieving your goals, all of these things, how do you feel that you as a person has changed over the course of the journey? Who are you now that, not that you weren't before, but maybe you didn't realize you were before?
Oh no, I definitely wasn't this person before. Like, I was very much, the world did to me. I didn't see myself as having control or being able to manifest things, or even being able to have these kind of opportunities growing up the way I did. What we're doing now is so far beyond anything that I ever knew growing up. Like, the furthest we'd traveled was an hour away from town. We had low socioeconomic childhood. Like, we had happy moments and everything, but we had challenging times. But now, knowing that I have the strength to overcome something like postnatal depression, and seeing the stigma that surrounds that, but also the lack of education and support before the event happens, is looking to help see those resources being built up, but also breaking the stereotypes and the stigmas of what is possible, and the fact that it's okay. Like, I mean, I love my children, but falling in love with them and seeing them for the first time probably only happened when the twins were about 18 months. One day they were playing on the floor, and I was just looking at them, and I'm like, wow, you guys are amazing. Like, I love you. Like, I'd always loved them and provided for them, and I could go back and be hard on myself and say, oh, what a horrible person. Like, who doesn't love their children? But falling in love with them was the most amazing thing. It was like the parting of a cloud, and the sun had finally shone through, and I could see clearly. And I guess having had those experiences with jiu-jitsu, like I set out to be a world champion. Like after competing for about a year, I started to look for something more. I've always been a person who I need higher goals to aim towards to guide me in being disciplined, being consistent, because you know you're working towards something. But I guess now I realize that working towards those higher goals, even if you don't achieve them, opportunities open. You learn something about yourself, and the journey really is the reward. So I guess that's my biggest learning curve, is that by achieving higher, you never know what is possible, because we don't know what we don't know until we try.
So with that, if you were to give yourself advice, if you were speaking to the person who started out, or speaking to someone else who's thinking, yeah, okay, maybe I'll give something a go, is that what your piece of advice would be, or would it be something else?
I think now, knowing what I know, my advice would be to sit down and develop a roadmap to at least guide you along the way, to actually allow time for self-reflection and weekly and daily journaling, to actually look at what you've achieved in the day. Because sometimes, especially in the society we have, we're always going to extremes, very much task orientated, looking for task completion. And you see all the Facebook memes, the Instagram accounts that are like, you don't need sleep, you just keep going 100%. My advice would be to look for consistent and daily effort, and to be honest with yourself and try and do the best you can in the moment, and start where you're from, rather than, I guess one of the sayings I say to myself now is, accept where I'm at, know where I'm going, but be inspired by the space in between, and don't count the days, but make the days count. Those are the biggest things, is because it is the daily consistent effort, regardless of what your aims are, that is going to get you there.
Yeah. It's amazingly true. And I think one of the things that I've looked at recently was start from where you are, do something with what you've got, and be what you are. I can't remember how it goes now, but it was something along the lines of exactly what you've just said. And it's so important to remind yourself to be in the moment, and to just know where you're going, but know where you are, but also just be in that moment and not be too attached to that outcome, because you never know what's going to happen in the meantime.
Well, you'd know that as a parent as well. Like, we only have this given moment. I mean, you'd never get a redo. You never get a do-over. Like, we make mistakes, but if you can honestly say, okay, I was present 100% or as best as I can be, and I gave it everything I've got, you will not be dissatisfied. But what we do today and in this moment creates tomorrow. Like, the present and the future is not tomorrow or down the track. It's right here and now.
And I think that kind of dovetails quite nicely into, so I was doing a lot of work today around my beliefs, and how the things that the kind of annoying little voices you have in your head that tell you can't do things, and then the things that you know you can do, and how you kind of relate between those two things. How do you work on your beliefs about yourself? Because obviously it's a massive part of being an athlete, but also being a person in a normal life, and getting through the day as an athlete, as your alter ego kind of thing. How do you manage your beliefs about yourself, and how you can kind of move forward and achieve your goals?
I guess, as I said before, like, I'm in the middle of looking at all this right now, because I've never looked at, actually sat down and reflected upon my beliefs and my values and my mission. Like, I've always known that I wanted to do something more, and that I wanted to help others. Like, I've always been a fighter. My nickname is the Barkindji Warrior, and that was a name that was given to me by my auntie, who was an elder in our community. And she's like, you've always fought to fight for others and to address any injustices you see, and if you believe a wrong is done, you fight to address it. So actually looking back over my life, I'm like, oh, well, this kind of just happened to me, but my path has kind of led me to this. And my belief system, sometimes it's hard to believe in yourself when you look at your goals and you're like, is that really realistic? Is that really possible? But I guess the thing that I love about it is challenging myself and challenging those beliefs and saying, well, okay, it looks a little bit unrealistic, but it's going to be a hell of a journey to try, because we don't know what is possible. So, I mean, when I said I was going to try for the World Championships, it was like, okay, well, why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? And I was like, well, I want to push myself. So what is it going to take to get there? And I looked at that, and that was about the extent of looking at my beliefs. But now I'm sitting back and I'm like, okay, this little voice is saying it's not possible. But then deeper down below that, it's like, but imagine if it is. Like, I always look for the one reason why I think it's going to work, and I disregard the thousands that it won't. And I focus on that, especially on the hard days. But I also want my children to believe in magic, like that life is a journey, and it's meant to be filled with, we have a term that life isn't, you're born and then you die. It's not a chronological thing that you tick off at certain ages. We have life moments. You have connection points where at the end of the day, when you do die and you take your last breath, you look back on your life. You don't remember every little thing. You remember the moments. And that's what I'm looking at my life as. I'm like, okay, I'm 32. Is it realistic that I'm traveling the world and I'm now aiming towards the Olympics, even though I'm a world champion in one sport? Why wouldn't I just stay there and keep going? Well, I've kind of reached the pinnacle. I haven't become a black belt yet, and I haven't reached the top that I can in the sport. But Jiu-Jitsu to me is my lifetime sport. It's my retirement sport. It's a sport that I can do for the rest of my life. But wrestling isn't something I can do for the rest of my life. It's grinding. It's a hard sport. And to make it into the Olympics against women that have been training for 20 years or been training since they were 5, I love the idea of challenging myself and going, well, I'm going to give it a good go.
Love that. Yeah. So if you mentioned your auntie and the fact that she obviously had a very kind of strong viewpoint of you and of the world and how things kind of should be, a lot of our beliefs come from our role models and the people who we have around us who help, to a certain extent on both sides, who help bring us down and push us up. But who are your role models? Who are your inspirations?
My nan is one, because she was a fighter. She was a mechanic in the war on the fighter planes. And she's the second eldest of 14 children. So for her to go and pursue that, like, she joined up to the army and she was like, I want to do this. And they're like, well, there's no spots available. So she just kept going back to the sign-up sheet every single day to see if there was a spot that she wanted to take. And on the day that she looked up, they're like, oh, we have spots for training to become a mechanic. So she's like, oh, great, I want to try that. So she decided that she knew she wanted to contribute something. And she wanted to do something more than working in the mess halls or being a nurse. So that was what she chose to pursue. But she always brought me up to realize that if you have a roof over your head, if you have food on the table, that anything else is a blessing. So gratitude has always been a big part of my life. My mum, who has passed away about 12 years ago now, always said to me, she's like, no matter what life throws at you, you can always become more than that. Don't be defined by your circumstances or others' opinions of you. Because growing up, being a fair-skinned Aboriginal, like, there's a lot of complexities to that. And growing up in Australia as an Aboriginal woman, there's a lot of stereotypes and statistics attached to what that looks like and who you should be. But even being a mum, like, you should be at home, you work 9 to 5, or you stay at home full time. When I got postnatal depression, my husband stayed at home and I went back to work. So he's one of my role models. Like, he stepped up and he took on that role, and he's like, okay, well, I'll do this so that you can get better. My children are my role models because they attack life without hesitation, without thought for consequences, and they learn by trial and error. Like, when a baby's learning to walk and they fall down, they don't give up. It's just instinct. It's nature. They try, and they don't let fear of failure dictate what is possible. And I guess for me, and my culture. Like, I look to my culture and my spirituality to strengthen me in the times when I become human and things get a little bit rough.
So you spoke about your culture in the first place, and how that's defined you in the sense of it's given you your fighting nickname, but also the fact that you got into jiu-jitsu in the first place, the fact that you have this utter determination and this kind of feeling for empowering other women and helping them to progress as well. It feels very much like everything about you goes with you wherever you go. Whereas I think for some people that's very difficult for them, and it's very difficult for them to kind of be the person that they are in their working and even social environment to a certain extent. Is if I picked that right, is that true? Do you go wherever you go?
You take me as I am, basically. And I've had moments where I've tried to be something I'm not, or I've tried to fit into what others' expectations of who I am and what I should be doing. And I haven't been happy, and like I've become someone else or something that I don't like. And I guess who I am and what I represent isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I'm okay with that, because I know that I challenge stereotypes, I smash down barriers, and if someone tells me something's not possible, or if I look at something and I'm like, it's not possible, I'm like, okay, well, everything was impossible until someone showed us that it was possible. And I saw a saying once, and it's like, in order to inspire and motivate people, you need to first show it's possible, because it's our actions that prove our words. Words are easy to say, but following that up with actions and actually proving it is much more powerful to people. And my job isn't to tell someone that they can do it. It's more like, well, if I can do it, like you said at the beginning, you're an ordinary person doing extraordinary things. And I absolutely love that, because people are like, oh, but you're amazing. I said, no, I'm not. I haven't started this at 5. I'm not naturally talented. Like, my partner can train, and he makes me so frustrated. He can watch a technique once and he can just pick it up and do it. And we'll be talking about something and I'm like, I really can't get this move. And he's like, oh, hun, you just do this, this and this. And I'm like, no, I need to practice. I need to practice. I have to do one move 100 times so that my body starts to understand it before I can get really good at it. And I guess for me, I now seek to surround myself with people who can see my potential. They don't look at it and go, well, realistically or logically, this isn't going to work. Rather, I want people to see the possibility, the idea, and go, okay, well, we can see that this is possible, but this is the work that's going to go in. I'm not frightened of hard work. So that's what I go in with. I'm not here to, if my ideas or my dreams make you uncomfortable, then that's a reflection of you, not me. And that's hard. It's not always easy to be authentic, but I prefer to fail at that and learn from trial and error than to try and pretend to be something I'm not.
And that was going to be one of my questions, because obviously when we're trying to follow our dreams and achieve our goals and do these things that are a big deal to us, but also they take us to step out of our comfort zones. The people we have around us and the environment we're in is so important to us being able to achieve that. How does that reflect in your life? Have you ever had to have the situation where you've kind of gone, no, I can't be dealing with you people because you're not helping me achieve my goal? Or have you had to change your environment to make it work for you?
Yeah, I have. I mean, some of them were family at one point, because to do what we do, like the discipline to get up and train and eat a certain way, takes a lot of understanding, and some people just don't understand the discipline and the sacrifice and the dedication required to achieve any goal that's big. Like, you have to put in the hours, you have to make choices and go from there. So I mean, at one point I kind of distanced myself from some family and some friends who were like, oh, but look at your age, or look at your children. I mean, your children need you and you're not spending much time with them. And at that time I was already dealing with my postnatal depression, like, so I didn't need, but it was my training and my sport make me a better parent, because I'm working towards something that lights a fire in me. So when I'm home with my kids, I'm present. I want to be there because I've missed them. I want to hear about their day, and that makes me a better parent. So my husband and I had to define for ourselves, what kind of parents do we want to be? What kind of children do we want to have? So I had to cut out people, and I've left coaches as well whose viewpoints and values didn't represent who I'd grown into. So I had to learn how to exit those relationships with being humble, but also being assertive as to my needs, because we don't get paid for this sport. It's an amateur sport. We spend a lot of our income, and we're sacrificing not buying a house and not being able to go on family holidays so that we can pursue this. So I had to find, and it's through trial and error. Sometimes you'll meet someone and they'll be the right person at that time for that part in your journey, but then you grow and you both grow apart and your values and your journeys don't align anymore. So I'm okay with letting people go if it no longer works for both of us. And I know that I'm not contributing value to their journey, but their journey is no longer compatible with mine.
So you talked about their kind of the hard work and the daily grind and the fact that you've got to do all these things over and over again. It's the practice and the consistency and all these kinds of things. What happens when you wake up in the morning and you're just not feeling it that day? How do you get yourself motivated?
That's a good question, because it's just like you wake up some days and you're like, I am so sore. It hurts to sit on the toilet. I'm so tired. A year ago, I would just get up and just push through. I'd be like, oh, suck it up, you're being soft. But now I actually look at it and I'm like, okay, how hard have I trained this week? Am I just being tired or am I fatigued? And that's where I kind of draw my line. If I know that I'm starting to get fatigued and I'm hitting the burnout point, I'm like, okay, I'll be kind to myself. I'm like, you know what? You go to training, but I work my training around my energy levels. It's like, okay, I trained really hard in this session, but right now I'm not feeling it, and that's going to lead to injury. So I work more from a technique basis rather than needing to push 100%. And now I'm applying the same thing to my kids or whatever. Like, you want to give your kids the best of everything and the best of yourself, but if all I've got for them is quiet cuddles on the couch and reading a book, then I'm okay with that, because I'm like, okay, tomorrow or after mummy's had a nap, we'll be able to do this. So I don't try and power through things as I would have a year ago. Now I actually look at it and I'm like, okay, I need to get the best out of myself. What is going to enable me to do that?
Awesome. Really, really good stuff. Thank you, Shantelle. So one last question.
Yes.
What is next for you? We've kind of heard a little bit, but what is next for you for, let's say, the next 12 months? And also, people listening to this will want to find out more about you, will want to follow you, see how you carry on and what you're getting up to. Tell us what you're going to be up to next, and also where people can find you.
Okay, so on the personal and family level, we're looking at our children have just started training, so we're coaching our children and they're looking to want to compete. So we're looking at how can we incorporate their training into ours. On a personal level, I'm looking at how can I combine my sporting role and use it as a vehicle to empower other people, and how do I do that? So I'm researching, like, how can I be more efficient with my social media? What training do I need to actually be able to reach more people, but also have a more authentic, genuine impact, and understand that people following or unfollowing my journey isn't a representation of me. That's just that their journey doesn't align with mine and they don't find value in that. That's not necessarily an impact on or representation of my value as a person and what I'm offering, which is an interesting place to be in, learning all that. I'm currently seeking sponsorship to try and work towards becoming a full-time athlete so that I can also develop my speaking skills. I want to go into schools and community groups and share my journey and do workshops around taking ownership of your life, not the extreme sort of stuff that other podcasts have, but more being, you've got to realize you've got to work hard if you want to get somewhere, but you can, like, exactly where you're coming from, like starting from where you're at, but rather than rushing into it, that's why I'm taking a step back. I'm being kind to myself over the next few months to really go, who is it that I am? Like, how did I come to be this person? Doing a little self-reflection. What do I need to put in place to be able to reach my next level of goals? So sporting-wise, Jiu-Jitsu, I'm currently training for my next competition in June next year, which is, if I win this competition, it'll be my 3rd consecutive title, but I'll also be getting my black belt from that competition, which is a big thing, because I was thinking it was going to take me 10 to 15 years to get to this point, but I'll also be competing against a caliber of girls that are just phenomenal. Like, these girls train full time, they train with big celebrity names in America, and I'm looking at, okay, I'm facing reality. These are the people I'm going to be competing, but I know I compete best when I back myself, when I focus on my own development. So I'm looking at that. With wrestling, after having competed this year in Africa, where I copped an absolute flogging, I have never been dominated physically or mentally like that before. I got picked up 5 feet in the air and dumped on my back by Nigeria, but I love watching the video back because I fought back. I can actually see physically the moment where I was like, okay, I can let her pin me or I can fight back. And I chose to fight back, knowing that I was going to lose, but I still gave it everything I had. So my goals with wrestling is to make it to the Commonwealth Games and medal, and then to aim for the Olympics in 4 years, and try to go back to Africa and take it back to them and have a greater performance than what I have so far. So I've got some pretty big goals in there.
Just a little bit.
trying to figure out, okay, well, that means cutting out a lot of things that don't align with those goals right now, because I figure I have 5 years left in me that I want to pursue an elite level athlete, which means the Commonwealth Games, the Olympics, trying to do as much as I can in Jiu-Jitsu and setting the scene there, but also just by virtue of being myself and pursuing my journey, how can that offer value to other people's lives, other mums, other people who face adversity and trauma, to understand that our circumstances do not have to define us. We can define the impact it has on our life, but it's also okay to fall down a little while as long as we pick ourselves back up. So I've got quite a lot going, but it's all aligning, so it's really cool. Like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm okay with that at the same time.
Wherever you go is going to be with passion and full of everything. So no matter what, I have absolutely no doubt that you will be successful with absolutely everything you attempt.
Oh, thank you. But if people would like to follow my journey, literally they just have to type Shantelle Thomspon or Barkindji Warrior. So how you spell Barkindji is Barkindji. There's documentaries on there. You'll find my links to Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. I'm not one for Snapchat just yet. Just let me ease into the other platforms first.
I can't get that one either.
I'm like, you know what, if people are so serious and the young ones want to follow me, or whoever is savvy on that, they can just follow me on the other platforms, because that's enough. So anyone that'd like to follow or is interested, more than welcome to come and join the community.
I'm sure they will. It's been an absolute amazing pleasure to talk to you. So inspiring. And there's so many messages for people. I'm sure people who watch this are going to be just chopping and pulling out bits from so many different parts of the answers you gave. It's been amazing.
I'm excited to actually watch it back myself, so I can go, oh, and get some clarity around my own thinking, because I'm finding that the more I do this sort of stuff, I'm actually learning stuff about myself. And I learn it by answering other people's questions. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that I thought like that. And I'm loving what I'm learning about myself. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and good luck with the project. It's going to be amazing.
You're so welcome. It's been awesome. Funny you should mention that. I walk around all day long, and I can't obviously write down when I'm pushing my daughter in the buggy. So I have my voice recorder on my phone. And so I just leave myself loads and loads of messages, just barbling messages of whatever comes to my head. And it's amazing what comes out of it.
I need a personal assistant, because I'm like, I was just saying this to my cousin last night. I'm like, I actually need to take 2 months to over the Christmas break, while I'm not studying and training while we're on a break, and actually start to look through all of my notes, because I'm pretty confident that the clarity that I'm seeking is already in the last 2 or 3 years of notes. I just need to dictate them to myself and order them and go, wow, I have the roadmap right here. But it'd be even great if I had a personal assistant to give all these notes to and all these recordings and say, right, dictate this for me, organize it, and we'll go from there.
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, if you get your sponsor, who knows, hey?
Exactly. Or you could always look for a volunteer and say, hey, I've got this idea and this concept. I need someone to dictate these. What do you think?
Hey, you never know. Someone listening might be like, I'm up for that task.
Exactly. Or a uni student, you never know who's going to be listening or watching. So you put it out there, you never know what's going to come back. Thank you so much,
Kirsty. Talk to you. Cheers, Shantelle.
Bye.
Good luck. Bye.